Jake Morrison stood in the middle of the giant council chamber, feeling very small. The room was huge, bigger than any building he had ever seen on Earth. Strange lights floated in the air without any wires or supports. The walls seemed to bend and twist in ways that hurt his eyes when he looked too long out around him sat the most powerful beings in the galaxy. They did not look like humans at all. Some looked like walking crystals that sparkled with their own light. Others had too many arms and legs, like giant insects. A few looked like floating jellyfish made of pure energy. They all had one thing in common, though. They were all looking at Jake like he was something funny. Jake had been Earth's best diplomat. For 15 years, he had dealt with angry presidents and stubborn generals, but nothing had prepared him for this moment. He was the only human in a room full of aliens who thought his entire species was a joke. "So this is what humans look like," said a voice that sounded like breaking glass. His speaker was tall and thin, made of what looked like living crystal. Light bent around its body in impossible ways. This was High Counselor Zin Thara of the Zephyrian Empire. How do they even see properly with only 2 eyes? Laughter filled the chamber. It did not sound like human laughter. Some aliens made clicking sounds. Others hummed in low tones. The jellyfish-like creatures pulsed with different colors. But Jake knew they were all laughing at him. "The humans have sent us their application to join our federation," announced the council leader. Its voice boomed from speakers hidden everywhere in the room. "They think they are ready to join civilized space." More laughter. Jake felt his face getting hot with embarrassment, but he stood straight and kept his expression calm. Behind him, Dr. Lisa Grant was taking notes on a small tablet. She was Earth's smartest scientist, and she had insisted on coming to this meeting. Jake was glad she was here. At least he was not alone. "Let us review their achievements," said War Prime Kliktar of the Vorthan Empire. It looked like a giant ant standing on 2 legs, with 4 arms and mandibles that clicked when it talked. "They have learned to travel faster than light, but only barely. Their ships are slow and clumsy. They still use chemical rockets to leave their home planet," added another alien. This one looked like a floating octopus with too many tentacles. How primitive. Jake wanted to speak up and defend humanity, but he knew it would only make things worse. The aliens had rules about when visitors could talk. He had to wait for permission. "What about their weapons?" asked Zenthara. "Surely they have developed something interesting for warfare." "Nuclear weapons," said Kliktar, and the clicking sound it made was clearly alien laughter. "They split atoms to make explosions, like children playing with firecrackers." The insults kept coming. The aliens talked about human technology, like it was toys made by babies. They mentioned their own incredible abilities, as if they were normal, everyday things. Some could travel through the 4th dimension. Others could manipulate the 5th dimension to move faster than light. The most advanced species claimed they could even work with the 6th dimension to create weapons that could destroy entire star systems. Dr. Lisa Grant was writing down everything she heard. Her pen moved quickly across her tablet as she recorded. The aliens' casual mentions of technologies that human scientists had only dreamed about. Jake noticed her eyes were wide with amazement, but also with determination. She was learning, even while they were being humiliated. "The humans think in only 3 dimensions," said Zenthara. "Length, width, and height. How can they possibly understand the universe when they cannot even see the 4th dimension?" "It is like trying to explain color to a creature that was born blind," agreed Kliktar. "They simply do not have the ability to comprehend advanced physics." Jake finally got permission to speak. He stepped forward and cleared his throat. "Honored counselors, humanity may be young, but we have achieved much in a short time. We have ended wars on our planet. We have cured diseases that once killed millions. We have created art and music that moves the soul. The laughter that followed was even louder than before. Art and music, exclaimed a blob-like alien that seemed to be made of living metal. What use is art when you cannot even manipulate space-time? Ending wars, clicked Clicktar. How adorable. Most species learn to do that before they discover fire. And curing diseases, added Zenthara. Any species that can work with the fourth dimension can simply prevent diseases from existing in the first place. Jake felt his hopes sinking. He had known this would be difficult, but he had not expected this level of complete dismissal. Earth's government had spent years preparing for this moment. They had gathered their best achievements, their most impressive technologies, their greatest cultural works. And none of it mattered to these beings. Perhaps, said the council leader, humans would be better suited to remain in their own solar system. They can continue to develop at their own pace without bothering more advanced civilizations. I agree, said Zenthara. Let them play with their three-dimensional toys. Maybe in 1,000 years, they will learn to see the fourth dimension. Then they can apply again. The vote was quick and unanimous. Every alien in the chamber agreed that humanity was too primitive to join the galactic community. They used words like dimensionally challenged and spatially limited and cosmically naive. As Jake and Lisa prepared to leave, they overheard some of the aliens making plans. Zenthara was talking to a group of other crystalline beings about taking a trip to Earth. It would be fascinating to study them in their natural habitat, Zenthara said, like visiting a zoo to see how primitive creatures live. We could learn much about early evolutionary development, agreed another crystal being. It has been so long since any of us were three-dimensional thinkers. Jake felt anger burning in his chest, but he kept walking. Lisa grabbed his arm gently and whispered, "Let them underestimate us. Sometimes that is the best advantage of all." As their small Earth ship left the space station, Jake looked back at the massive structures floating in space around them. The aliens had built incredible things. Their technology was beyond human understanding, but something about their attitude bothered him. They think they know everything, he said to Lisa as they headed home. Lisa was still looking at her notes, her mind clearly working on the scientific concepts she had overheard. Maybe they do know everything about their way of doing things, she said quietly. But that does not mean it is the only way. The journey back to Earth would take 3 weeks. Jake spent the time writing his report, trying to find diplomatic ways to explain that humanity had been rejected because the aliens thought humans were too stupid to matter. But Lisa spent the time thinking about fourth dimensions and space-time manipulation and all the impossible things the aliens had mentioned. Neither of them knew that their humiliating failure would soon become the first step toward humanity's greatest triumph. 6 months had passed since Jake Morrison and Dr. Lisa Grant returned from their humiliating trip to the Galactic Council. Most people on Earth had heard about the rejection by now. The news made some people angry, others sad, and many just scared. But deep underground in the mountains of Colorado, something incredible was happening. Dr. Lisa Grant stood in front of a massive metal door that required 3 different security checks to open. Her hand scanner, eye scanner, and voice recognition all had to match perfectly. Only 12 people on the entire planet were allowed through this door. Lisa was one of them. The underground laboratory was huge. It had been carved out of solid rock and lined with the strongest materials Earth could make. Bright lights hung from the ceiling, making everything look clean and white. Computers hummed quietly along the walls, processing data that would have amazed the smartest scientists just a year ago. General Frank Miller walked over to Lisa as she entered the main work area. He was a big man with gray hair and serious eyes. He had been a soldier for 30 years, but he had never worked on anything like this before. "How are we doing today, Doctor?" he asked. Lisa looked tired but excited. She had been working 18 hours a day for months. We made another breakthrough last night, General. I think we finally understand how consciousness affects dimensional barriers. At the center of the laboratory, a strange machine hummed with power. It did not look like anything humans had ever built before. Curved metal pieces twisted around each other in patterns that seemed to move when you are not looking directly at them. Wires and cables connected everything to computers that ran calculations no human could do by hand. Dr. Carlos Rivera was bent over one of these computers, typing numbers faster than most people could read. He was the best mathematician in the world, and even he sometimes got confused by what they were trying to do. The equations are working, he called out to Lisa, but I still do not understand how human minds can actually change the math. Doctor. Amy Chun looked up from her own workstation. She specialized in studying how the brain worked, especially how people thought and felt and experienced the world. That is because you are still thinking like the aliens do, she said with a smile. You think consciousness is separate from the universe. But what if it is not? Amy had been studying meditation and advanced thinking techniques from all over the world. She had found that when people trained their minds properly, they could sense things that instruments could not detect. Some monks claimed they could feel the flow of time itself. Some artists said they could see colors that did not exist. Explain it to me again, said Captain Steve Parker from across the room. He was working on the physical design of their ship, but he needed to understand the science too. Steve was both an engineer and someone who had studied meditation for years. This combination made him perfect for what they were trying to do. Lisa walked over to a large screen on the wall. It showed a diagram that looked like a flower made of mathematical symbols. The aliens think you need massive amounts of energy to break through dimensional barriers, she said. They use exotic matter and force fields and all kinds of complicated machinery. She touched the screen, and the diagram changed. Now it showed a human brain connected to the same mathematical flower. But what if consciousness is not separate from the dimensions? What if awareness itself is a kind of energy that can interact with space-time? General Miller frowned. He understood weapons and tactics and military strategy, but this science was beyond him. Are you saying that thinking can actually change reality? Not exactly, said Amy. We are saying that the barrier between thinking and reality might not be as solid as we thought. Quantum physics already tells us that observing something changes it. We are just taking that idea further. Carlos looked up from his computer again. The math works out if we assume that consciousness can act as a guide through higher dimensions. Instead of forcing our way through like the aliens do, we could navigate through by using human intuition. Steve nodded slowly. He was beginning to understand, like the difference between breaking down a locked door and finding the key. Exactly, said Lisa. The aliens break down the door with brute force. We are learning to find the key. The work had started right after Lisa returned from the Galactic Council. She had spent weeks studying her notes, trying to understand what the aliens had said about dimensional manipulation. Most of it was beyond human science, but a few things had caught her attention. The aliens had mentioned that working with higher dimensions required exotic consciousness patterns. They had said this like it was a problem, something that made dimensional travel difficult and dangerous. But Lisa wondered if it might actually be an advantage. What if humans already have these exotic consciousness patterns? She had asked her team during their first meeting. What if that is why we think differently than the aliens do? It had taken months of research to find the answer. They studied brain scans of artists, musicians, poets, and inventors. They looked at the brain activity of people who meditated, who dreamed, who experienced strong emotions. What they found was surprising. Human consciousness was much more complex than anyone had realized. While the aliens seemed to think in very organized, logical patterns, human minds were chaotic and creative. They made connections between ideas that should not be connected. They saw patterns where there should be no patterns. They imagined things that did not exist and then made them real. This chaos might be exactly what we need, Lisa explained to General Miller one day. The aliens are too organized to navigate seven-dimensional space naturally. But human minds are already used to dealing with impossible things. The ship they were building looked simple from the outside. It was about the size of a destroyer, with a smooth silver hull that seemed to shimmer when you looked at it. But inside, it was unlike anything ever created on Earth. The control room had 24 seats arranged in a circle. Each seat was connected to the ship's dimensional drive through a neural interface. The human crew would not just pilot the ship, they would become part of it, using their consciousness to guide it through dimensions that aliens needed massive computers to navigate. Will it actually work? General Miller asked during one of their progress meetings. We will not know until we try, Lisa admitted, but the math says it should, and the small-scale tests have been successful. They had built smaller versions of the dimensional drive and tested them with volunteers. People who meditated regularly seemed to do better than others. Artists and musicians also showed promise. Anyone who was used to thinking creatively and making intuitive leaps could learn. To sense the flow of higher dimensions, Captain Steve Parker had been the best test pilot by far. His combination of technical knowledge and meditative training allowed him to navigate four-dimensional space with an ease that amazed everyone. If anyone could pilot their ship through 7 dimensions, it was him. I can feel the dimensions, he had told Lisa after one test flight. It is like hearing music that has too many notes, but somehow it all makes sense. The project was completely secret. As far as the rest of the world knew, Earth was still struggling with basic space travel. The aliens who occasionally visited Earth as tourists saw exactly what they expected to see, a primitive civilization that could barely reach its own moon. But down in the Colorado mountains, humanity was preparing to prove that there was more than one way to reach the stars. They were about to show the galaxy that consciousness and creativity could be just as powerful as exotic matter and brute force. The ship was almost ready. Soon they would find out if human minds could really dance with dimensions that had defeated every other species in the galaxy. The alarm that woke Jake Morrison at 3 a.m. was not like any alarm he had heard before. It was the sound that meant Earth was under attack. Jake rolled out of bed and grabbed his emergency communicator. The voice on the other end was Admiral Kate Johnson, commander of Earth's defense fleet. She sounded calm, but Jake could hear the fear underneath her words. Jake, we have a situation. You need to get to the command center immediately. We have visitors, and they are not here to talk. 20 minutes later, Jake stood in the underground command center beneath New York City. The main screen showed space. Around Mars, where dozens of alien ships had appeared without warning. They were huge, each one bigger than Earth's largest space station. And they were moving toward Earth. Who are they? Jake asked. Vorthan Empire. Admiral Johnson replied. The same species that laughed at us during your council meeting. Apparently they have decided our solar system belongs to them now. On the screen, Jake could see the Vorthan ships flickering in and out of view. One moment they were solid and visible. The next moment they seemed to fade like ghosts. It was their fourth-dimensional technology at work, making them nearly impossible to target. Have they made any demands? Jake asked, as if in answer to his question. The main communication screen lit up. A giant insect-like face appeared, with multiple eyes and clicking mandibles. Jake recognized Fleet Commander Zaktar from the intelligence files they had studied after the council meeting. Primitive humans. Zaktar's voice clicked and buzzed through the speakers. I am Fleet Commander Zaktar of the Vorthan Third Conquest Fleet. Your species has been judged unworthy of this star system. You have 72 hours to evacuate your homeworld. After that time, we will claim this system for the Vorthan Empire." The transmission ended, leaving the command center in stunned silence. "Evacuate Earth?" Admiral Johnson said incredulously. "In 72 hours? That's impossible. We don't have enough ships to move even 1% of the population." Jake felt sick to his stomach. This was exactly what he had feared might happen after the council meeting. The aliens had not just rejected humanity, they had marked Earth as a target for conquest. "What about our defense fleet?" he asked. Admiral Johnson shook her head grimly. "We launched everything we have. 12 battle cruisers, 30 destroyers, and over 100 fighters. Watch what happened." The screen showed Earth's most advanced warships approaching the Vorthan fleet. Jake watched as the human ships fired their most powerful weapons at the alien vessels. Plasma cannons, nuclear missiles, and kinetic projectiles all struck their targets. For a moment, Jake felt hope dot, and the Vorthan ships flickered and became solid again. They were completely undamaged. The human weapons had passed right through them, while they were phased into the fourth dimension. "Our weapons can't even touch them," Admiral Johnson said quietly. "They can attack us while remaining completely safe themselves. It's not a battle. It's target practice." As if to prove her point, one of the Vorthan ships fired a single beam of energy. The beam struck the Earth battleship Courage, and the massive vessel simply vanished. No explosion, no debris. It was there one moment and gone the next. They disintegrated it at the molecular level, a technician reported. The ship just stopped existing. Jake watched in horror as Earth's fleet retreated. There was nothing they could do against enemies who could phase in and out of reality at will. Humanity's most advanced weapons were useless against fourth-dimensional technology. "Get me President Williams," Jake ordered. "We need to start evacuation procedures immediately." But even as he said it, Jake knew it was hopeless. Earth had 8 billion people and maybe 50 ships capable of interstellar travel, even working. Non-stop for months, they could not evacuate more than a tiny fraction of humanity. His communicator buzzed with an urgent message. It was from General Frank Miller, the man in charge of Project Dimension. "Jake, I need you to come to Colorado. Immediately. We may have an option." "What kind of option?" Jake asked. "The kind we've been working on for the past 6 months. It's not ready, but it might be our only chance." Jake had heard rumors about a secret project in the mountains, but he had been too busy with diplomatic work to pay much attention. Now, he wondered if those rumors might be humanity's salvation. 2 hours later, Jake found himself deep underground in a facility he had never known existed. Dr. Lisa Grant met him at the security checkpoint, looking exhausted but determined. "Jake, I'm glad you're here. We need to move fast." She led him through corridors, filled with equipment he did not recognize. Scientists and technicians hurried back and forth, all of them looking like they had not slept in days. "Lisa, what is this place?" Jake asked. "This is where we've been building humanity's answer to dimensional technology," she replied. "Remember all those notes I took during the council meeting? We've been using them to develop our own approach to higher dimensional travel." They entered a massive underground hangar. In the center sat a ship unlike anything Jake had ever seen. It was sleek and silver, about the size of a destroyer, but its hull seemed to shift and shimmer with patterns that made his eyes water when he looked too closely. "This is the Liberty," said Captain Steve Parker, walking over to greet them. "She's designed to travel through 7-dimensional space using human consciousness as a navigation system." 7 dimensions? Jake stared at the ship in amazement. "But the aliens can only work with 6 dimensions at most." "That's because they're trying to force their way through dimensional barriers," explained Dr. Lisa Grant. We're doing something completely different. Instead of fighting the dimensions, we're learning to work with them. General Miller appeared beside them, his face grim. Jake, I won't lie to you. We don't know if this will work. The ship has never been tested in real combat conditions. The crew has only had basic training on the consciousness interface systems. And we're about to go up against a fleet that just destroyed our best warships without taking a scratch. But it's our only chance, added Captain Parker. Even if we fail, at least we go down fighting instead of running away. Jake looked around at the faces of the people who had built this impossible ship. They were tired and scared, but they were also determined. They had spent months working in secret to give humanity a fighting chance. How many crew members do you need? Jake asked. 24, Captain Parker replied, all volunteers. The consciousness interface is dangerous. We don't know what prolonged exposure to seven-dimensional space might do to human minds. You have your volunteers, Jake said firmly. When do we launch? Dr. Lisa Grant checked her watch. The ship can be ready in 6 hours. But Jake, you should know, even if this works, even if we can fight the Vorthans, we'll be revealing our capabilities to the entire galaxy. There will be no going back to being an unknown, primitive species. Jake nodded. Good. I'm tired of being underestimated. As the countdown began, Jake sent a message to Admiral Johnson and President Williams. Earth's conventional forces would continue their desperate evacuation efforts. But humanity's real hope now rested with a silver ship and 24 volunteers who were about to attempt something no species in the galaxy had ever achieved. The Liberty was about to show the universe what human consciousness could do when it stopped accepting limitations. Captain Steve Parker felt the Liberty shudder as it prepared to enter seven-dimensional space. Around him, 23 other volunteers sat in their neural interface chairs, their minds connecting to the ship's consciousness system. Each person looked calm on the outside, but Steve could sense their fear and excitement through the mental link they all shared. All stations report ready, called out Dr. Lisa Grant from her position as the ship's dimensional navigator. She had insisted on being part of the crew, despite the risks. Consciousness interface is stable. Seven-dimensional drive is online. Steve took a deep breath and opened a communication channel to Earth's command center. This is Captain Parker. Aboard the Liberty, we are beginning our approach to the Vorthan fleet. Whatever happens next, it has been an honor to serve humanity. The ship began to phase into higher dimensions. Steve felt his mind expanding in ways he had never experienced before. Suddenly, he could sense directions that had no names, distances that could not be measured, and spaces that existed between the spaces he knew. It was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. Through the seven-dimensional view, the Vorthan fleet looked different. Steve could see their ships existing in multiple dimensions at once, but they were limited to the first 6 dimensions. The Liberty was moving through the 7th dimension, a space the aliens could not even detect. "My God," whispered Dr. Amy Chun, who was monitoring the crew's mental states. "I can see everything. The past, the future, the connections between all things. Is this what seven-dimensional space feels like?" "Stay focused," Steve warned. "Remember your training. We are here to protect Earth, not to explore the mysteries of the universe." The Liberty emerged from seven-dimensional space directly in the center of the Vorthan fleet. Alarms immediately began sounding on every alien ship. Their instruments had never detected anything like this before. Fleet Commander Zaktar stood on the bridge of his flagship, staring at readings that made no sense. "What is that ship? How did it appear inside our formation without triggering our sensors?" "Unknown, Commander," replied his tactical officer. "It appears to be the primitive human vessel, but our scanners show it existing in 7 dimensions." Simultaneously, This should be impossible. Steve opened a communication channel that broadcast on all dimensional frequencies. His voice reached every ship in the Vorthan fleet and transmitted back to the Galactic Council chambers billions of miles away. This is Captain Steve Parker of the Earth vessel Liberty. You came to our system believing we were helpless. You were wrong. The demonstration began gently. Dr. Lisa Grant used the ship's 7-dimensional capabilities to reach through 6-dimensional space and simply turn off the weapon systems of the Vorthan flagship. The massive alien warship suddenly went dark, floating powerlessly in space. Impossible, Zaktar clicked in panic. They disabled our primary weapons without firing a shot. How did they reach through our dimensional shields? Steve's voice came through the communication system again, calm and controlled. Commander Zaktar, you have exactly 1 minute to order your fleet to leave this solar system. If you refuse, we will demonstrate why you should not have underestimated humanity. You are bluffing, Zaktar replied, though his voice shook with uncertainty. One primitive ship cannot defeat an entire Vorthan fleet. Steve nodded to his crew. Show them what we can do. What happened next changed galactic history forever. The Liberty did not attack the Vorthan ships with weapons. Instead, it began moving them. Using 7-dimensional space manipulation, Doctor. Lisa Grant and her team reached into the 5th dimension and simply relocated enemy vessels. One moment, a Vorthan battleship was firing at Earth's moon. The next moment it found itself floating near Jupiter, thousands of miles away from the battle. Another ship tried to retreat into the 4th dimension, only to discover that the Liberty could reach into that space and move it to the edge of the solar system. This is impossible, Zaktar kept saying as he watched his fleet being scattered across the solar system like toys. No species can manipulate 7 dimensions. It requires too much energy, too much computational power. Doctor. Lisa Grant's voice came through the communication system, explaining what the aliens were witnessing. Commander, you assume that advanced technology requires abandoning organic consciousness. You think minds and machines must be separate. We proved you wrong by combining them. The aliens watched in growing horror as the Liberty demonstrated capabilities that defied everything they thought they knew about physics. The human ship did not brute force its way through dimensional barriers like alien technology. Instead, it seemed to dance through higher dimensions with an elegance that no artificial intelligence could achieve. Dr. Carlos Rivera, working as the ship's mathematical coordinator, sent a data stream to the Vorthan computers. These are the equations we use for 7-dimensional navigation. Notice that they include variables for consciousness, intuition, and creative thinking. Your computers cannot solve them because they lack imagination. Back on Earth, Jake Morrison stood in the command center watching the battle on the main screen. Admiral Kate Johnson stood beside him, her mouth open in amazement. They are not just winning, she said quietly. They are making it look easy. The Galactic Council had also been watching the demonstration through their long-range sensors. High Counselor Zien Farah sat in stunned silence as reports flooded in from across the galaxy. The primitive humans had achieved something that the oldest, most advanced civilizations had never managed. 7-dimensional manipulation using organic consciousness as a guide, Zenthara whispered. We never thought to combine biology with higher mathematics. We have been approaching dimensional travel all wrong. Captain Steve Parker opened the communication channel one final time. Commander Zaktar, your fleet is defeated. You have 2 choices. Leave our solar system immediately and never return, or we will relocate your ships to the other side of the galaxy. The choice is yours. Zaktar did not hesitate. All ships retreat immediately. Set course for Vorthan space, maximum speed. The alien fleet disappeared into hyperspace within minutes, leaving Earth's solar system empty except for the Liberty and the human defense ships that had been watching the entire battle in amazement. But Steve knew the real consequences were just beginning. News of humanity's seven-dimensional capability was already spreading across the galaxy at faster-than-light speeds. Every advanced civilization was receiving reports about the species they had dismissed as primitives. Within hours, Jake Morrison received an emergency communication from the Galactic Council. High Counselor Zinthara appeared on the screen, looking humbled in a way that few beings had ever seen a Zephyrian look. "Commander Morrison," Zinthara said formally, "the Galactic Council wishes to extend a formal apology for our previous treatment of humanity. We also wish to extend an invitation for Earth to not only join the Galactic Federation, but to lead our new Dimensional Research Council." Jake looked at the alien who had mocked him just months before. "Counselor Zinthara, we appreciate your apology and your invitation, but we will join the Federation on our own terms. Respect is earned through actions, not through fear." "Understood," Zinthara replied. "What are your terms?" "Equal representation for all species, regardless of their technological level. No more dismissing civilizations because they think differently, and a commitment to learning from each other instead of competing with each other." The Liberty returned to Earth to a celebration unlike anything in human history. But Captain Steve Parker and his crew knew this was just the beginning. Humanity had proven that consciousness and creativity could achieve what brute force could not. They had shown the galaxy that there were always new ways to think, new dimensions to explore, and new possibilities for those brave enough to pursue them. Dr. Lisa Grant stood on the observation deck of the Liberty, looking out at the stars. "We did not just save Earth today," she said to Steve. "We changed how the entire galaxy thinks about consciousness and technology." Steve nodded. "And now we get to explore what else is possible when you stop accepting limitations." Humanity had taken its place among the stars, not through conquest, but by proving that the greatest technology was the one that embraced the full potential of conscious minds working together. The species that had been mocked for thinking in only 3 dimensions had just taught the galaxy that there were always more dimensions to discover.